Jumping In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. Yes, and here we are once again, would you believe, Saturday night on Manx Radio, 9 o'clock. It is our favourite time of the week. We like to think it's your favourite time of the week. The best in modern and contemporary jazz in Jumping In with myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, welcome along to this week's show. And what a cracker of a show it is too. No change there then. Isn't it strange how a feeling of calm descends on a household once the schools break up? A few weeks without any exam trauma, as there's nothing anyone can do about it now. The roads are all clear on the way to work, or at least they would be if they weren't all dug up. And we can look forward to a jazz-filled summer, particularly if, like us, you can manage to fit in a festival or two. In fact, this weekend we're going to pop across to the Dinant Festival in Belgium. No doubt we'll tell you about it in a later show. So, H, what's been the top of your holiday playlist, and what's stuck in departures waiting for a plane? Any plane, just a plane.
Just anything at all, yeah, you're right. Well, I've got John in Brooklyn, I've got Michelle in Montreux, and I've got Mike in the studio.
And from me, something old, something new, something small, and to start, here's something light from the Miho Hazama M Unit, A Beam. We've featured the music of composer and conductor Miho Hazama and her M Unit on the show before, but a new release celebrates 10 years of the band, and what a great band. We can't name them all. M stands for Mahusive, I think for massive. It's an enormous thing, including full strings, as you heard, but this particular version, special mention for the great Christian McBride on bass and the fantastic sax playing of Emmanuel Wilkins. Stuck in a Harlem apartment during lockdown, rather than be depressed by the pandemic and the political unrest in the run-up to the US election, she decided to look outward rather than inward. In fact, she started researching exoplanets and went on to compose the Exoplanet Suite as a commission for the 2021 Monterey Jazz Festival, and that forms the core of her new album. Beyond Orbits and the opener we heard, A Beam, the album's out now on Edition, and many thanks for them sending us a copy.
Well, from M for Massive to T for Tiny, or T for Trio in this particular case, the John O'Gallagher trio, been around for some time, captured live in this particular case in Brooklyn, as in American Brooklyn. He's been around for some time, wonderful player, recorded quite a bit on Michael Janish's Whirlwind labels, and this track has the wonderful name of Extralogical Railman. And as you gather, that sort of segues into the next one, Live in Brooklyn, which is what the trio were, and that's the name of the album, the John O'Gallagher Trio, live in Brooklyn in 2015. John O'Gallagher on alto sax, Johannes Widmuller on bass, Mark Ferber on drums, who I think are a regular working trio for John for some time. He's, again, one of those names where he's been around since the 1988, I think he moved into New York, and you look at who he's played with, well, it's, the list would be shorter if you've looked at who he hadn't played with. He's played in all the major clubs in the States, in the Knitting Factory, Smalls, Birdland, Village Vanguard, been featured playing with Joe Henderson Big Band, Maria Schneider, Kenny Wheeler Large Ensemble, Jason Linder Big Band, Ron Horton Sextet, Bob Belden, David Phillips, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. He's worked with Al Foster, he's worked with Tom Harrell, he's worked with Chris Potter, Richie Barike. Yeah, you get the gist. He played with everyone. And yes, this side of the ocean, maybe not that well known. I think we saw him a while back playing in one of his bands. I'm just trying to think which one it was. It might have been with Jeff Williams with his band. I know he's played with him for a while. He had Axiom at one stage with Tony Malaby, John Herbert and Jeff Williams and the Open Door Trio, which I think is pretty much what was there. You heard Ernest Friedenmuller, and he used to have Jeff Hirschfield on the drums. Terrific stuff, like I said, wonderful player. I'd like to see him in that trio setting. Very fine indeed. And as I say, that's a nice one. You can check it out. It is on the Whirlwind record, which of course is the label run by the bass player Michael Yanish.
Indeed it is, and what a nice guy he is too. Speaking of people who've been around, now over the years we've featured jazz from all over the world, but there's always been plenty from the Scandinavian countries, including Finland. Now the Finns seem to be a calm people, taking their time to do things, no doubt reflecting over the long dark winters. Well, one composer and pianist who likes to take his time is Jukka Linkola, who after a considered period has released their second album, a mere 27 years after the first. I suppose it was a case of, I'm finished, so I've started. Here's Grandpa Pike. Grandpa Pike from the Yucca Lintola Tentet, they've obviously been practicing for the last 27 years, perhaps taking inspiration from warmer climes, as the album Rumba Liberte is anything but cold. A great swinging album with a mix of young and old musicians bringing a great mix of experience and energy. Yucca says, the album and our future concerts provide an energetic and unexpected experience, full of appealing creative madness. Those crazy Finns, hey? Roberta Liberté is out now on the Flame Jazz record label.
Hey, I mentioned Maria Schneider, and here she is.
Hi, this is Maria Schneider, and you're listening to Jumpin In with H and Chris on Manx Radio.
Very nice indeed, and sounds pretty good still now, doesn't it? That is Big Band Harriet. Yes, Joe Harriet, of course, died in 1973, virtually penniless, one of those sort of... Everyone says he was a genius, but in his day he made next to nothing, and I think died with hardly a penny to his name. As interpreted by the Mike Garrick Jazz Orchestra in 2004. Mike, no stranger to the Isle of Man either. I know we spoke to him once or twice, and he certainly played at least once, if not twice, maybe more, on the Isle of Man. And I think the last time we saw him was down at London at the London Jazz Festival, and we had a nice chat. He could be a bit of a spiky character if you didn't approach him the right way. And again, I think he always felt he didn't himself quite get sometimes the attention he might have deserved, and of course, as is often the case, he did get more attention once he'd passed away. That's human nature for you, I guess, isn't it? The music of Joe Harriet Quintet with the Mike Garrick Jazz Orchestra, and that track was called Spiritual Blues, and again, fantastic lineup of lots of top names in the British scene. Mark Armstrong on trumpet, Steve Waterman's there as well, Quentin Collins playing, Mark De Silva on the trombones, Dave Eagleston, Martin Hathaway in the reeds, and then Dominic Ashworth guitar, Paul Morley at the bass, Alan Jackson and/or John Marshall on the drums, and of course behind the keys and putting it all together, the wonderful Mike Garrick. I picked that up quite recently actually when we were down at Ray's Jazz, still there in Foyles, albeit it's shifted across the way into a corner with no windows, but it's still there. So if you're down in London, go and support it, because if you don't support it, it won't be there much longer.
Indeed so. And Mike, he did think he perhaps ought to have been receiving a few more plaudits, but a great composer as well. Liked to do his suites. There's lots of fantastic suites written by him.
And the poetry as well, didn't he? Did the poetry, jazz and
very
poetry.
involved in jazz and poetry. Now, another man who's been on the scene for many, many years and perhaps has been in the background far too long is 81-year-old drummer, vibes player, composer Joe Chambers. He was on a string of great historic Blue Note albums recorded by Joe Henderson, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Bobby Hutcherson, among others, back in the 60s, as well as Archie Shepp's great Impulse albums. Well, his new Blue Note release, Dance Corbina, melds jazz, African and Latin grooves, as a fellow drummer Max Roach did with Mboom, which Chambers also played in the 70s. Corbina, incidentally, is an African word meaning to dance, so let's dance, dance. Here's This Is New. Great stuff. Joe Chambers with This Is New, and indeed it is, from the recent Blue Note release Dance Cabina, with a great band. Caroline Power on alto, Marvin Coulter on tenor, Rick Gummerson on piano along with Andreas Weil, Michael Davidson on vibes, Mark Landowski and Ira Coleman on bass, Emilio Valdez and Ellie Miller-Amabungu on percussion, and of course Joe Chambers, an energetic 81 at the drums.
Yes, you wouldn't guess that, would you? Still sounding really modern, fresh, terrific stuff. I enjoyed that very much indeed. Another man we used to enjoy an awful lot back in the day and saw play several times live was the incredible Michel Petrucciani, who overcame a terrible bone disease throughout his life, which ended his life far too young, so it meant he never grew to full stature, but his hands were, so he could play these amazing chords with the pianist, but had to have this raised pedals because the rest of his body was so short. But an amazing character from all accounts, a brilliant pianist, and left a wonderful recorded legacy. And we never got a chance to chat to him, unfortunately, because he came across as a real character, it has to be said. But like I said, lots of music left around. I have just been away on holiday, and whilst I technically can now say I've been to the Montreux Jazz Festival, inasmuch as we went to Montreux while the Jazz Festival was on. I didn't actually see any jazz, if truth be known. There was some jazz on Yaron Herman, but you know what? Sometimes you've got to sort of, discretion is the better part of valour, and when you're on holiday, particularly with your better half, who's maybe not quite as keen on jazz as you are, you have to go with the flow. So we got up there, had a meal, sampled a little bit of the atmosphere of Montreux while the jazz were on, but didn't get any. However, in the Fnac store back in Lausanne later on during the holiday, I spotted this, Michel Petrucciani, the Montreux Years. And I thought, well, it's obviously fate, isn't it?
Hey, this is Tony the Tiger. Nice to finally meet the guys at Manx Radio. They're great!
Terrific stuff. We were just saying it's been a good swinging show this evening in one way or another. A bit of a twofer there for you as well. If you remember the old gatefold twofers, I suppose you still get them in CDs, if not in downloads. That was Javon Jackson with his first original film score for the Art World documentary with Peter Bradley. Came out in June of this year via his own label, Solid Jackson Records, and features his quartet with Jeremy Manasseh, bassist David Williams, and two drummers actually, McClenty Hunter and also Charles Gould, and Greg Glassman guesting on trumpet, and that track was called In the Studio. Good sort of bebop-y, swinging blue note stuff, and Javon Jackson been around for quite some time now, played around, and this is the first time he says he's had to go, something he's always wanted to do, putting together a film score for this documentary. Haven't seen the film, but dare say it'd be interesting. Be worth it for the music alone, judging by that. Before that, the wonderful Michel Petrucciani from an album out just called The Montreux Years. As I say, got up to Montreux, didn't see Michel there, sadly. No, not longer around. Didn't see any jazz, but I did see this album later on in Fnac and thought, I've got to pick it up, haven't I? Great performances from 4 legendary concerts, rare and previously unreleased material from Claude Nobb's private collection, all remastered. And we heard there, as you might have recognised, Autumn Leaves, which featured Michel with the wonderful Miroslav Vitus at the bass, and that was recorded in the Miles Davis Hall in 1996.
Great favourite. We saw him many, many times, I'm glad to say, and what a nice guy. And that's about it for this week's show, but we can just speak in a late edition, hot off the press, well, on Edition Records again, anyhow. The latest from pianist and composer Aki Rissanen, who we have had some wonderfully reflective piano trios from him in recent years, but his latest release, Hyperreal, there's a distinct shift in gears with drummer Robert Litz and also long-time collaborator trumpeter Vinerai Payola. Seeing Rissanen switch between acoustic and electric keyboards, Hyperreal is an album about change, as Rissanen explains, with the rapid transformation of reality to the AI-generated virtual reality, or hyperreality. You have to be aware we adapt these things and distinguish between what is real and unreal. Here's Quantum Ballad, and Real Enough, we'll be back next week.
We will. Keep swinging.
Bye for now.
Take care.
Bye.